Welcome back. I watched Disney's A Christmas Carol from 2009. Dark, ambitious, and surprisingly effective. I'd rate it a 7 out of 10. I had some good fun with this movie, even though it isn't a fun movie. Disney's A Christmas Carol from 2009 is a movie that, well, I enjoyed far more than I expected to. This is an adaptation that often gets criticized for its motion capture animation. I can see why, and definitely for the darker tone. But for me, those exact choices are what make it stand out. It's definitely not the coziest or warmest version of Dickens' story, but it's one of the most visually striking and thematically committed ones. This isn't a background Christmas movie either. It asks for your attention, and when you give it the attention it deserves, it mostly rewards you. The story, of course, is the familiar one. We have Ebenezer Scrooge, a bitter, isolated man who is visited by three spirits who force him to confront his past, present, and future. What sets this version apart immediately is how seriously it takes the darker elements of the tale, which I really enjoyed. From the opening scenes onward, Victorian London feels cold and oppressive and heavy. It feels like a very unfun place to be. It's a place that mirrors Scrooge's inner life, really. One of the strongest aspects of the film is how it introduces Scrooge himself, played by Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's performance is often divisive, but here I think it works remarkably well. His Scrooge is sharp, unpleasant, and emotionally sealed shut. Early scenes like his interactions in the counting house or his dismissal of charity collectors feel pointed rather than cartoonish. Carey uses restraint where you might expect excess, giving Scrooge a stiffness, a bitterness that feels earned, really. I enjoyed it. The motion capture animation actually helps here a lot. Scrooge's rigid posture, sunken eyes, and angular movements reinforce the idea of a man who has hardened himself against the world. He doesn't feel cuddly or exaggerated. He feels closed off, exactly how Scrooge should be portrayed. The first real standout moment comes with Jacob Marley. Marley's arrival is genuinely unsettling, like for real. His face distorts unnaturally, his jaw slackens, and his ghostly form seems to fight against itself. The chains don't just exist as props, they feel heavy, invasive, and symbolic. When Marley warns Scrooge of what's to come, the scene leans fully into dread rather than comfort. It's one of the most effective Marley scenes across any adaptation, I think. And it immediately establishes that this version isn't going to soften Dickens's warning. The Ghost of Christmas Past continues that tone. Rather than being gentle or nostalgic, this ghost is strange, sharp edged, and emotionally probing. The childhood scenes, especially young Scrooge left alone at school during Christmas, are handled with real care, real subtle. The emptiness of the school halls, the cold lighting, and the quiet isolation sell the emotional damage Scrooge carries far more effectively than I think dialogue ever could. Watching Scrooge visually recoil as he's forced to relive these moments, it's one of the film's strongest emotional uh, through lines, I think. You're not really just told what he is the way of why he is the way he is, but you can actually feel why he is who he is, or why he has become who he is. The Ghost of Christmas Present is where the film shifts gears visually, I think, but it remains thematically consistent. This ghost is really loud, physical, and, well, over the top, overwhelming, really, a deliberate contrast to Scrooge's rigidity. The famous flying sequence through London often gets criticized. That's, well, a thing, but for me, I actually think it serves a purpose here. It forces Scrooge out of his narrow perspective and it shows him the sheer scale of human experience beyond, his control, really. The visit to Cratchit's household is another highlight in this movie. The home is modest but warm, filled with small gestures and genuine affection. Tiny Tim, in particular, is handled with restraint. He's gentle, sincere, and never pushed into manipulative sentimentality. The emotional weight of his condition comes from the family's quiet acceptance rather than, dramatic speeches, really. And then there's The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, easily one of the film's greatest strengths. This final act leans fully into gothic horror and it works beautifully, I think. The ghost's elongated silhouette, the swirling shadows, and the silent judgment it embodies makes these scenes genuinely haunting. Scrooge's frantic attempts to outrun his fate, sliding across the ice, tumbling through collapsing environments, visually represent his desperation in a way that feels organic rather than indulgent. The graveyard scene in particular is excellent. The silence, the cold blue tones, and Scrooge's slow realization of what he's seeing create a moment that feels really earned and emotionally it also feels quite heavy. When Scrooge finally breaks down and begs for another chance, it doesn't feel sudden, it feels inevitable. What really surprised me though is how well the transformation lands. It does a really good job. When Scrooge wakes up on Christmas morning, the shift in Carrie's performance is clear but not jarring. His movements loosen, his voice softens, and his joy feels earned rather than manic. The final scenes of the movie, especially his interactions with the Cratchit family, bring genuine warmth after so much darkness in the movie, making the emotional payoff even stronger because of the contrast. Visually, the film remains impressive throughout, it really looks good. The snow covered streets, candlelit interiors, and fog filled alleys create one of the most immersive Victorian Londons put on screen. I really, really enjoyed it. It may not be traditionally, quote unquote cozy, but it's atmospheric in a way few adaptations attempt. Is this movie perfect? Definitely not. The motion capture animation can still feel uncanny at times, and Jim Carrey playing multiple roles occasionally will pull focus away from, the ensemble, really. But these are trade offs in service of a bold creative vision, I think, and I respect the movie for committing fully to that vision. And in the end, Disney's A Christmas Carol stands out because it dares to be darker, stranger, and more ambitious than most holiday adaptations. So for me, that earns it a solid 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie and I would recommend anyone to watch it. It's not the warmest or funniest version of Dickens' story, but it is one of the most visually inventive and emotionally serious movies. If you want a Christmas Carol that leans into atmosphere, consequence, and genuine transformation rather than just comfort, this one absolutely delivers. So go watch it. That's my take on the movie. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.